Actually, I think when somebody's there, it like lights up. So I don't know if anybody was there to begin with, but I'll open it just in case. And I think we're already recording now on QuickTime, so I can add this to YouTube. So in our content page, if you navigate back to week 2 and open up the week 2 module, there is a quiz that says quiz on Bonnie Smith's Women's Studies Theory chapter.
Is that which week?
Week 2.
Okay.
And when I was looking over everybody's work, I noticed that not a lot of people did well on that quiz. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because it was just, a pretty dense chapter and a lot of terms that are abstract about the concepts that we're working with. So for Black women leaders and for U.S. women's movement, we're looking at the past to try to get some problem-solving strategies that would appeal and be useful today. So these threshold terms, though, are kind of a language that makes it a little bit easier to understand, I guess, the goals of what we're trying to work on. And actually, I don't think stupid computer is going to let me look at the quiz or look at the test. I guess if I look at my first results, that will do it. But then that'll be good because I know the answers. So the first question says that feminist ideas can be mere criticisms of society's treatment of women in a standard rather than revolutionary way. Theories differ because they suggest the only way to combat society's treatment of women is revolution or man-bashing and switching roles, so men are subservient and exploited. So that kind of takes something out of the chapter, but it compares, ideas and theories. So based on what we've talked about thus far in class, would you agree that feminist ideas are criticisms of society?
Yeah. Wait. Feminist ideas. I'm trying to word that again.
So if we think about a feminist, not in terms of the stereotypes today about the manly-looking woman with hair on her chin that they were even talking about in the Vanguard movie. If we think about Ida B. Wells or Frances Harper as what we're talking about when we say feminist, did they criticize the way society treated women in a just kind of general complaint kind of way? Or did they proceed in a revolutionary way, meaning they tried to go to the roots of the problem? So we can say that their ideas are revolutionary because they go to the roots of the problem. And theories are explanations. So their explanation for how they could improve their place in the world obviously had nothing to do with man-bashing or switching roles. In fact, Ida B. Wells and Frances Harper were particularly concerned with supporting Black men as well. So we know that one is false. And the second one, and then the feedback, I got it wrong. So the feedback says that feminist theories are explanations that look at issues problematically, going to the root of the problem. Try to look at things from a different perspective and to offer solutions, and I think we can see clearly that Harper and Wells did that. The second question is U.S. feminism and women's movement largely tried to bring women to equal status with men. Women in other countries or within certain populations in the U.S. had other agendas, such as having food and land and water, protecting your body from forced labor, sexual violence, or torture. Yet forms of abolition and coalitions to create a better future have also existed in U.S. women's movements. So basically, to rephrase that question, we see in Vanguard that the mainstream U.S. women's movement was about equality with men. But there's more forms of abolition than just abolishing slavery, obviously. There's anti-lynching, there's movements against incarceration and police brutality, police abolition. There's also, like you said, Black Lives Matter is a coalition kind of movement. But it was started by women who also identify as feminists. So even though Bonnie Smith in that chapter says U.S. women's movements are about equality and they have some cooler ideas in other countries, in fact, if you look at Black women leaders, then you do see that there's more than just equality with men or equal status with men. So that is true. In the U.S., there are forms of abolition and coalitions to create a better future in U.S. women's movements, but we see them mostly historically through Black women's organizations. So Drew, number 3, you on that yet? Did you get to the quiz yet? Yeah. Oh no, you're in the discussion? Okay. We're just going over that week 2 quiz about Bonnie Smith's threshold terms. And what I did was I kind of put bold terms in the quiz. And I want to use the quiz as a way to think about these abstract terms that were in that didn't really resonate with anybody at the beginning of the semester, but how they really apply to what we've learned so far. So so we're in week 2 in that Bonnie Smith Women's Studies Theory Chapter quiz. So number 3, you want to take a stab at that, Nick?
Theories can help organize the proper culture. Like theories can ask why things are unfair in the first place. Like, for example, how power structures are invisible and take for granted.
It's a crazy phrasing because I based it on the way that she wrote it.
I actually got that one right.
Yeah. And yeah. Again, theories give us a problem-solving toolkit. So when Frances Harper talks about power structures, she doesn't use that term, but in the We Are All Bound Together speech, she talks about coverture. She talks about the fact that when her husband died, she couldn't inherit his farm. She lost everything. She talks about the unequal treatment on streetcars and about how Harriet Tubman got thrown off a streetcar and how she got thrown off a streetcar. And so she talks about different power structures that her audience of white women was completely oblivious to because these things didn't happen to them. Although coverture would have happened to white women as well, it's just that they probably wouldn't have thrown a white woman out on the street when her husband died if he owned property. The neighbors probably would have been a little bit kinder. But as Black farm owners and free Black people in 1859, when her husband died, everybody just wanted to take everything because Black property owners were always in jeopardy. But that's an invisible power structure that the white women wouldn't have known about. And white women probably didn't know about black women getting thrown off public transportation. So at the end of the speech, when she says white women are not dewdrops exhaled from the sky, she's saying white women are oblivious and don't do anything about the real problems. But, power structures are the real problem. And the goal isn't just to be equal with men. Her goal, Harper's goal, and all of the black women leaders' goal was always to have humanity fix a whole bunch of problems of inequality. So, question number 4. Theories go to the root of problems. And when we think about Frances Harper theorizing and saying the root of the problem with marriage, the root of the problem with property ownership is that black people get treated differently and that, black people are discriminated against in public transportation. The reaction to her core belief that women and black men and women all deserve their property, dignity, to make their own decisions, to vote, her core belief that she stated when that women's suffrage movement broke apart in 1869 was, I've seen white women discriminate against working women and black working women. So her core belief is that working women deserve the same respect and rights as middle-class women. Her core belief also includes property rights. So she's bringing up several issues in her core beliefs that go beyond just equal status with men and voting. Although she said, I would not throw a straw in the way of black men, because she said black men are more likely to support her, to share her core beliefs than white women. That caused a break, they call it the Great Schism, which is splitting in two, in the women's suffrage movement. So this is a very sarcastic question. Harper and Douglas challenged the core beliefs of Stanton and Anthony, and they had to make 2 separate organizations. And Lucy Stone and her husband were the only ones who shared the core beliefs that Douglas and Harper had. So it split apart the women's suffrage movement. When you think about other kinds of core beliefs that still exist today, in the feedback I put this example about meritocracy. So the theory of meritocracy is the idea that anything that you have is because of how hard you worked and your effort. So that might work on the basketball court, right? But does it work in every walk of life? Does everybody have an equal shot? There were also a lot of cases historically at
So that's like,
yeah.
you see stuff like that all the time, like say, for instance, it's a black man and a white man, and a black man has all the credentials, but the white man may just know someone in the company. So
Right.
That's why he get hired over the black man.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you think about, like, I know a producer for Dr. Phil, so I get to talk about critical race theory. The leading experts and the founders of critical race theory live in LA. Why do I get to do it? Well, I happen to know one of the producers.
Right.
She also happens to be black, and I also don't think that Kimberly Crenshaw or Cheryl Harris would be on the Dr. Phil show. But yeah, that happens all the time. There's insider networks. There's also situations where a lot of coaches are white, and I've known a lot of athletes who struggled with white coaches. Like Pat Summitt is legendary, but Pat Summitt had a lot of rules that had nothing to do with your performance academically or as a basketball player. You weren't allowed to have tattoos. I don't think she allowed dreadlocks. And she prayed all the time. So if there was, like, if you think about, in contrast, the Rutgers team and their coach, Vivian Stringer, she didn't worry about any of those things. So she had players who had a lot of tattoos and dreadlocks, and they were a great team too. But if it was, I think it's more common that there are more white coaches who are going to have those particular kind of rules. And I have seen I've seen a lot more black players get pushed out of sports than I've seen white players. Have you ever seen those kind of dynamics?
Yeah, it was this one kid, I forgot what state it was, but he had to, I think he did like wrestling or something, and like they wouldn't let him compete in the state tournament or something. It was like a championship or something. They wouldn't let him compete because he had dreads, so they made him like he had to cut his hair off.
Yeah.
But he got like really long dreads. Like,
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
they just cut them off with scissors, I think.
Yeah.
Like, how about Samson and Delilah? They cut them right there at the meet too. I saw that video. Yeah, and what wrestling is kind of a white sport still, right? So yeah, then we have that other thing about white sports and black sports, and so there's definitely meritocracy. However, if you say that to someone who's in a powerful position, how do they react? Like, if we said you don't just have all this because you deserve it, you have it because you have privilege.
Right.
It's gonna backfire.
Oh, they're going to get mad as hell. Yeah. So there's a lot of emotion around theories, and there's a lot of emotion around, revolutionary ideas. Okay, Drew, are you with us for question 5?
What's the question again?
Question 5 about one example of a useful theory is Marxist feminism.
Oh, it's a false.
Okay, go ahead. Read the question because I think it's funny.
An example of a useful theory of Marxist feminism, because it promises that capitalism is always a free market, and women can therefore take the opportunity to earn their money and become wealthy.
So obviously, like Marxism, because it's associated with socialism, isn't going to promote capitalism. And people get really mad if you criticize capitalism. The actual argument that Marxist feminists make is the reason we have gender discrepancies and the reason that there's greater expectations for women to do all the household chores and all of the child rearing is because that makes women so burdened that they aren't able to get into those higher positions in the meritocracy. And even when women do succeed in corporate positions, if they don't get a promotion, then I've had women tell me, well, that's because they took time off because they had a baby. Like, well, if a man takes time off because he has to have back surgery so he won't be paralyzed, if a man takes time off because he got in a car accident, does anybody hold that against him? And he didn't bring a new child into the world. So you said something in the discussion about women, I gave you some heat about it, about women need to think about whether they can support a child before they have children in the reproductive justice discussion, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And I think I responded to you, like, I've decided from a Marxist feminist, and it's like political theory or economic theory perspective, that since I do everything in my home, I should get 2 salaries. And I should be paid for my job and for raising children. Oh yeah, and that's the next question in the political economy theory. That when we think about the original equal status with men goal of white feminism, I make fun of that all the time. So now I have equal status with men. I can be the breadwinner, I can be the head of household. But I don't have a husband, so thanks for nothing feminism. I also have to rake the leaves, mow the lawn, take out the garbage. Yeah, I can be, all of the conventional head of household. But then who's going to make dinner? So those kind of questions are also important to think about. And it is exhausting. And there is a lot of criticism toward Black women who are heads of household, even though in the 20th century Black women became heads of household because of government policies, because it's more difficult to get, up the social ladder. It's more difficult to get out of poverty if you are the head of household and the caregiver. And let me tell you, I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't moved up the social ladder at all since I had children because it's so difficult. So if mainstream feminism thinks that just letting women have equal status to men is going to solve the problem, well, no. What we really have to think about is also the work that women do in the workforce and with caring for children. And be much more serious about the fact that Black women more often have to do that double role. I can complain about it, but it's more common. So I say thanks a lot, Alice, Paul, and Betty. Actually, Betty for Dan, that's her name. And I'm being sarcastic. Thanks for nothing. And that's where I said that, I'm a superwoman. I'd rather just get paid for taking care of my children at this point. Because isn't that an important job? Anyway, that was question 6. How about question 7?
In Marx's theory, according to the author, how can women improve their condition? It says mental rest. I got it right. I said completely overthrow the capitalist system.
Yeah, that's what the author said. And again, I'm pretty sure Bonnie Smith is a white woman. But if we look at Black women leaders from Shirley Chisholm to Barbara Jordan, and even women of color leaders, including now AOC, you know who she is? She's the representative from New York State that Fox News really hates. And someone in Congress made a poster of AOC and the representative from Minneapolis, and do you remember the name of, her name is, anyway, my point is that historically most Black women leaders in politics in the Congress have actually promoted more things that we might call socialist, universal health care, child care, those reproductive justice goals. So I don't think that the only way for women to do better is to have a revolution and not to have capitalism. I don't think that's going to happen. And the reason I say that is because from Shirley Chisholm to to AOC, there have always been Black women in national politics who have had some good solutions for the problem in number 6, whereas white women, not so much. So yeah, white people would say overthrow the capitalist system. Shirley Chisholm has some better ideas. Question 8 is all of the above, because it's just the idea that power is centralized, but that people take for granted that power is centralized and don't notice what happens to people other than themselves. And then the definition of womanism, that comes up again next week. So Alice Walker didn't think that white feminism was really working. So she said that womanism is more of an identity that involves courage and joy and purpose, and that isn't defined by racism. The last one about an individual being an autonomous actor making rational choices is, it is called postmodernism, but the important thing is that Anna Julia Cooper wanted to be an autonomous actor making rational choices, but she did realize that the behaviors from our society and its laws and its norms needed to be changed. But most people don't really think about laws and norms and customs as things to even criticize or that need to be changed. So that's why that question is important. Now, the answers to those questions are also, and so if you do that, if you do the quiz again for that, then I'm counting that as the first test, and it has more attempts. So once you figure that out and what it has to do with what we've done, oh my God, I went over time again, I'm sorry. Then the second test will make a lot more sense. We can talk about that another time. Sorry that I keep going over time. You don't have another